In Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, 42-year-old Clarence Biddle departed from his residence shortly after 500 a.m. on the morning of October 12, 2012. Clarence had been working as a journeyman electrician for about 20 years, primarily on contract at different power plants in the area. As he had done nearly annually since his mid-20s, he informed his wife Reba that he was leaving for a solo hunting weekend in the Poconos on Friday morning. Reba said that this occurred frequently for "Hi there, Clarence." He was most comfortable driving the same silver 1999 Ford F-150, which he reserved for the early fall, and he liked to be alone. Without incident, he loaded up his gear, secured the backyard shed, and drove off. Clarence Bidd would vanish without a trace after that. Reba Bidd, who was 38 years old when the incident occurred, informed authorities that her husband intended to return by Sunday night, October 14th. She phoned the local police to submit a missing person report when he did not make any contact or appear by Monday morning. She informed the sheriff's departments from the Susquehanna County Sheriff's Office learned that Clarence's recent layoffs from his temporary contract job at the Montour Power Plant had put him under a great deal of stress. The first reaction from the police was in line with what is typically done when someone goes missing in the woods. The area around Wemart is famous for its vast forested environment and few ranger prisons. Clarence said he was going to camp near a state-managed game reserve. Rescue workers from several counties were aided by. The most used trailheads and hunting spots were inspected by volunteer organizations. Canine detectives were dispatched. Scanners hovered over the treetops, collecting data. Both Clarence and his vehicle were not located. The main entrance point to the game reserve did not record Clarence's license plate, according to Thomas Ely, a local forest ranger who notified the investigators. Please tell us in the comments from where you're viewing this so that we can begin to dig further. Your feedback is much appreciated. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing. A video that we have in the works. In order for hunters to keep track of their vehicles, the reserve used a gate logbook that was handwritten. There was no indication of Clarence's identity or license plate. Also, the perimeter trail systems and fire roads were equipped with animal monitoring cameras, but they didn't pick up on his truck or him. Investigation progress slowed due to a lack of sightings, tangible evidence, and activity on Clarence's credit cards and cell phone. Following that, in the beginning of November 2012, about 3 weeks following Clarence's abduction, Reba got a letter in the mail. With a postmark from Buffalo, New York, came the envelope. Also included was a note that stated, "I'm gone. I need peace. Don't look for me." Although it was unsigned, Reba maintained that Clarence's handwriting was visible. She gave the letter to the proper authorities. The official reclassification of the disappearance as a voluntary departure was made in December 2012. No one was taken into custody, no one was wanted, and no additional search operations were planned. Though it was theoretically open, Clarence Bidd's missing persons file was inactive. After 7 months of being listed as missing, Clarence's profile was discreetly removed off the 6 active missing persons registry in May 2013. Since last fall, his social security number has been inactive. His utility records, bank accounts, and credit lines did not show any activity or use. The call never came through on his phone. His affiliation with the International Brotherhood of Struggle. Dues were not paid, and the electrical workers, IBW, lapsed. In essence, Clarence had vanished from all observable systems of identification and trade, not only physically, but also in every way imaginable. Public curiosity gradually diminished. Vigils and subsequent media coverage were non-existent. Neither the state nor the national media covered Clarence's story. The mysterious disappearance of a peaceful man in the sleepy rural town of Montrose continued to pique residents' interest. The disappearance of Clarence Bidd became a cold case when no fresh information was uncovered and no body was found. Territory. From the end of 2013 until the beginning of 2020, the case remained unresolved with no fresh information or efforts by law enforcement to reopen it. For the story to once again grab people's attention, it would take almost 8 years and a random traffic stop more than 200 meters distant. After Clarence Bidd went missing 6 months earlier, in March 2013, Reba Bidd packed up their home in rural Susquehanna County and moved to Willsbar, Pennsylvania, around 40 miles south. This change occurred at the same time as she was transferred from her secretary job to a different administrative position at the Luzerne County Housing Authority from the Montrose County Clerk's office. Claiming financial difficulties, Reba sold the house she and Clarence had shared and moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the south side of town. She filed a claim on Clarence's $60,000 term life insurance policy that same month. The policy had a provision that allowed for distribution after 180 days of confirmed absence. Full payment for the policy was made by the end of April 2013, even though Clarence's official demise had. Since it had not been proven in court, the insurance company relied on the police report and classification of the disappearance. The money went toward paying off Reba's household debts, and she recorded the rest as savings on her later tax returns. Neither did she seek an official death certificate, nor did she submit an application for survivor benefits. Interviews with Reba's ex-neighbors on Miller Hill Road revealed that, in the months after Clarence's disappearance, she ceased maintaining eye contact and shied away from small talk, according to one of her neighbors. She never legally changed her name or sought a divorce after relocating to Wilkes-Barre, but she did start using her maiden name, Reba Holtz, in some informal settings. Colleagues said she was quiet and focused at work. According to several of her co-workers, she simply said "gone" whenever talking about Clarence and never went into depth. A romantic relationship between Reba and Randall Farrow started in 2014. Prior contractor hailing from the county of Luzerne. With no felony convictions on his record, Farrow's minor criminal history included 2009 allegations of trespassing and misdemeanor property damage. He was notorious in the area for taking on odd jobs for cash because he had been unemployed on and off for years. There is no evidence of a business license in his name in the public records. The Farrow took up residence in Reba's flat at the beginning of 2015. Though he never really got a marriage license, he did declare her as his principal residence on taxes at the federal and state levels. In 2018, Reba had included Randall as her emergency contact on her health insurance and employment documentation. She applied to refinance a personal loan that she had taken out with Clarence in 2009, the same year they were both co-signed. The bank needed confirmation of Clarence's status in order to proceed with the refinancing. Clarence had cut off all communication and was assumed dead owing to protracted illness, according to a notarized document that Reba presented in response. Mysterious disappearance. The paperwork was sufficient to close the account, even without the death certificate, according to the bank's internal requirements. There was a notice for the permanent closure of Clarence's remaining inactive bank accounts. At the beginning of 2019, his credit report was marked as inactive. It appeared as though he had been completely removed from the system. One individual remained unconvinced despite Clarence's life being administratively closed. His younger sister, Lisa Bidd, a Scranton-based registered nurse. The circumstances surrounding her brother's disappearance had long worried Lisa. She told the Pennsylvania State Police in 2020 that she thought the letter sent from Buffalo was faked or forced, and that she never thought Clarence would just disappear without a trace. Lisa continued to contact the sheriff's office on an as-needed basis beginning in 2013, but she never heard back from them. Angry at nothing happening, Lisa enlisted the help of a private data tracing agency that focuses on inactive, register vehicles, and keep track of previous addresses. The search for Clarence's missing 1999 Ford F-150 was the primary objective of the investigation. The company scoured car registration databases, pound lot records, and vehicle identification number databases across multiple states. No positive findings were found. No one in Pennsylvania, New York, or the neighboring jurisdictions had seen Clarence's truck. According to the study, the vehicle's registration has remained inactive since late 2012. Everything changed on May 27, 2020. About 8 years ago, the first tangible clue was unearthed during a traffic encounter in western New York. Outside of Jamestown, a city in Chiocca County about 100 miles south of the Canadian border, New York State troopers performed a routine traffic check on the afternoon of May 27, 2020. The gray Ford F-150 pickup truck was seen driving eastbound on Interstate 86 with license plates that had expired in Pennsylvania. It was just the driver, a Caucasian man in his early 50s, on the road. Upon being contacted by police, his failure to present a proper form of identification, including a driver's license, was a result of enforcement efforts. He claimed to be Daniel Marks, but could not produce any paperwork to back up his assertion. The responding trooper asked for a vehicle identifying number, VIN, check because the individual couldn't be positively identified and his story didn't add up. The Pennsylvania citizen Clarence Bidd, whose whereabouts have been reported missing since 2012, was the registered owner of the vehicle whose identifying number was recovered from the dashboard and door frame. The entry brought attention to a factual document showing that the car was linked to a closed case of a missing person from Susquehanna County and had never been found. Officers detained the motorist on suspicion of posing as a wanted person and stealing a vehicle. To continue with his processing, he was taken to the Chautauqua County Sheriff's Office. Throughout his first 48 hours in jail, the individual adamantly refused to do anything: sign intake paperwork, identify his next of kin, or answer questions. At last, a routine biometric scan was finished and his real identity was revealed. In the role of Randall Farrow, a person known to have been associated with Reba Bidd and a former resident of Luzerne County with a minor criminal record. When Farrow was taken into custody, there were no outstanding warrants. Once his identity was verified, he asserted his right to legal representation and declined to answer any other questions. At the same time, the car was towed to a forensic impound lot run by the state police. Clarence Bidd's 1999 Ford F-150 was proved to be the same vehicle by examining the truck's van, which had been given a subdued gray paint job at the time of his vanishing. The original license plates had been swapped out for a set that had been recovered from a trailer that was no longer in use, which had belonged to a relative of Farrow's who had passed away. As police examined the vehicle's frame more closely, they found serial numbers on the chassis that were partially aided, leading them to assume that someone was trying to hide ownership. It had been in relatively little use for the past 8 years, according to the odometer. An investigation into the building's interior was mandated. Specialists found a brown leather wallet that looked worn but yet in good condition. The contents included various artifacts that belonged to Clarence Biddle, a sun-damaged union card from IBW Local 1249, a 2009 dated folded photo of Clarence and Reba, and a gas receipt from a station in Binghamton, New York. The receipt's time-stamp stated October 13, 2012, which is the day after Clarence was said to have left for his solitary hunting trip. On the day after his last known whereabouts, Clarence's car was located at Binghamton, according to the receipt's discovery, known sighting. Since Clarence Biddle's disappearance, this was the first tangible connection to him. The New York State Police were in touch with their Pennsylvania counterparts. The retrieval of the vehicle and the identification of Randall Farrow as the driver were reported to the Susquehanna County District Attorney's Office and the Pennsylvania State Police. State authorities started working together right away because of the seriousness of the initial case and the fresh forensic evidence. An attorney for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. As part of a larger criminal investigation, the reactivation of Clarence Bidd's missing persons file was permitted by the General's office. Documents pertaining to Clarence's alleged death, a locked metal filing box, and a plethora of personal records were among the intriguing artifacts unearthed during the search. However, a particular group of papers stood out. A number of rough drafts of remarks written by hand that are quite similar to the November 2012 letter that was sent to Reba. The one that was supposedly written by Clarence and sent from Buffalo, New York. Just one. The language in both versions was almost identical, but one of the drafts was missing information and had markings that were typical of Willsbar post office sorting stamps. In the process of analyzing the handwriting and ink, these specifics would emerge as crucial. A key mark shed that was clearly marked was also located by the search party. When detectives saw the reference, they got in touch with the present owners of the Susquehanna County home that had belonged to Biddle. Entering the backyard shed, which had stayed mostly unoccupied, they went back to the property with permission. Never touched since 2013 when it was sold. Evidence uncovered during the investigation of Reba Bidd's Wilkes-Barre residence in early June 2020 completely recast the Clarence Bidd case. Found in a storage cupboard next to the bedroom was a closed metal filing box, one of the most important things found. Among the many folders in the box were insurance correspondence, personal letters, and financial records. The recipients of multiple letters were presumably Clarence's younger sister Lisa Bidd. Lisa goes by the name Lisa. It seemed like these letters were composed in the months after Clarence went missing, but they were never mailed. They touched on things like coming to a close, tough choices, and progressing forward, but they left out any discussion of Clarence or the police. Particularly noteworthy were numerous handwritten versions of brief notes, one of which bore striking resemblance in structure and text to the November letter received at the Biddle residence. Year, 2012. The unfinished draft had the same sentence as the original mailed note. I'm gone. I need peace. Don't look for me. However, it did not match the Buffalo postmark and had internal postal sorting marks that did not match the original. A postmark from nearby Luzerne County was also discovered on one-half envelope. Due to these discrepancies, forensic handwriting experts were contacted right away. An antique brass key was also found by the investigators with the letters, referred to as just shed. Because of this, we were able to get in touch with the present owner of the Susquehanna County home that Reba and Clarence had left behind. After buying the home in 2013, the owners made it clear that the rear shed had remained untouched and unaltered since then. Police searched the building with the residents' permission. Within the shed, the police discovered a damaged portion of the rear wall. Closer examination exposed it to be an imposter panel held in place only by a few shaky wooden fasteners. Screws. A storage void, or a space big enough to conceal a someone or an item, was discovered by investigators behind this panel. Discoloration like aged biological material was visible on the void floor, and an imprint resembling a rectangular tarp-wrapped object was visible on the plywood base. Blood splatter was detected at considerable amounts along the back wall, according to chemical luminol testing. From the site, the evidence-gathering team collected numerous biological samples. A solitary hair strand grew back. From the floor area was later determined to be belonging to Clarence Bidd through mitochondrial DNA research. Even though it had degraded, the blood residual nevertheless tested positive for human blood using partial markers that matched the Bidd family profile. The search area was expanded to encompass the perimeter of the backyard in accordance with usual protocol. A shallow burial location was found by the authorities near the rear fence line. Among Clarence's belongings was a corroded metal box that had his current Pennsylvania hunting license and other personal documents, all the way into 2013, along with a broken wristwatch and a pair of worn-out work boots. Neither Reba nor the original missing persons inventory had ever reported recovering these items. Researchers have come to the conclusion that Clarence Bidd had most certainly never departed for the Poconos on October 12, 2012. Rather, the prevalent belief changed to indicate that he was murdered within or close to the family residence that early morning, and that the story of his voluntary abduction, which included the Buffalo letter, had been created subsequent to the event. On June 4, 2020, arrest warrants were obtained based on all available evidence. The charges against Reba Bidd included insurance fraud, evidence destruction, and conspiracy to conduct fraud. On top of obstruction of justice and tampering with physical evidence, Randall Farrow faced charges of unlawful use of a motor vehicle. Following their nonviolent detention, both individuals will be arraigned at the Luzerne County Court of Common. Refusal to release Reba on bond was based on worries about her potential to flee and the seriousness of the allegations. A $150,000 bond was used to hold the Farrow. Upon their arrest, neither of the defendants spoke to the press. Both parties did not immediately enter a plea. More than 8 years will pass following Clarence Bidd's disappearance in January 2021. Reba Bidd and Randall Farrow were formally charged by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the Luzerne County Court of Common Pleas. Each defendant had their own lawyer and appeared in separate chairs in the same courtroom for the joint trial. Assistant District Attorney Rachel Morrow based her prosecution on four main points. November 2012 saw the mailing of the fake letter to the Biddle residence. The incongruities in the stated date of Clarence's disappearance, the forensic evidence found in the backyard shed, and the unlawful possession of Clarence's vehicle by Randall Farrow. This was not a disappearance. It was a premeditated erasure. A man's life was destroyed, and in her opening statement, Ada Morrow made it clear. In its stead, a story was concocted to advance financial and personal interests, she said, outlining the prosecution's case that Reba, posing as a hunter, had enticed Clarence into the backyard shed on the morning of October 12, 2012, at the crack of dawn. The confrontation took a tragic turn at that point. Although they did not assert knowledge of the specific manner of death, the prosecution contended that the physical evidence indicated a violent incident occurring within the shed. The prosecution submitted financial records that demonstrated the defendant's purpose, which, by the middle of 2012, the Biddles' unsecured debt had grown to over $28,000. Also, throughout that time, witnesses saw a developing romance between Reba and Randall. Under oath, Denise Halpern, one of Reba's co-workers, said that Reba confided in her about feeling imprisoned and hoping for a way out of her situation shortly before Clarence disappeared. In addition, Halpern confirmed that Reba had brought up someone she was beginning to see, though she refrained from mentioning Farrow by name. Critical forensic testimonies were provided by detectives who were engaged in the search of the shed. The patterns of blood splatter, according to crime scene specialist Mark Callister, were consistent with blunt trauma and indicated a medium-velocity hit. Additionally, he pointed out that luminol exposed attempts at cleansing on various surfaces. The DNA experts verified that one of the hairs found at the scene matched a Clarence Bidd, and they found indicators in his blood that were compatible with his maternal ancestry. At first, it was presented as a letter from Clarence, purportedly sent from Buffalo. Key component of false proof. Expert testimony from a handwriting expert established that the 2012 letter was very similar to drafts found in Reba's residence. The ink study verified that the pens Reba had ordered through her employer before were a perfect match. The jury was presented with pictures of two nearly similar letters, one that had been sent and one that was still unfinished. The only differences in syntax were slight. Silent for the most part, Farrow chose not to testify in his own defense. According to his lawyer, Randall had no knowledge of the car's history when he started driving it and had no involvement in Clarence's abduction. According to the defense, Farrow was portrayed as a helpless figure who had been dragged into the plot after the fact. According to Reba's legal team, there was no concrete evidence of murder. The lack of a corpse, an established method of death, or a murder weapon was stressed. Clarence, according to her lawyer, had departed freely, and Reba, after years of being silent, had only tried to relocate. The defense's framing of the handwritten drafts as part of Reba's emotional processing and a means of finding closure, rather than proof of fabrication, failed to sway the jury. A panel that had heard testimony for 3 weeks and deliberated for 6 hours returned with unanimous judgments. All allegations against Reba Bidd, including conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and insurance fraud, were declared guilty on March 12, 2021. The court found Randall Farrow guilty of aiding and abetting fraud and mishandling tangible proof. The sentencing was set to take place the month after that. Without posting bond, the two offenders were remanded into jail. Lisa Bidd, who is the sister of Clarence, gave a short remark outside the courthouse. Word got out that he left. The truth has returned at this moment. In the court of Luzerne County, sentencing was announced on April 14, 2021. For the first 17 years of her 25-year sentence, Reba Bidd was not eligible for parole. Delivered by Judge Celia Horton. Reba's actions were described as immoral and planned, with the sentencing highlighting his efforts to hide Clarence Bidd's apparent death and make money off of his disappearance. Because of his part in the plot, Randall Farrow received a 14-year prison term. Judge Horton pointed out that Farrow's prolonged engagement in the cover-up, including his use of Clarence's vehicle and active participation, was significant, even if the court did not accuse him of direct involvement in Clarence's death. Being complicit in supporting a false narrative was made evident through the obstruction of the investigation. No charges of murder were brought against Reba Bidd or Randall Farrow, even though the evidence was overwhelming. The most important restriction was still that Clarence's corpse wasn't there. While presenting their case for a homicide conviction, prosecutors stressed the importance of having either human remains or an established cause of death on hand. Proof of insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and evidence tampering instead supported the convictions. Obstruction, all of which were supported by forensic and circumstantial evidence that was presented throughout the trial. A court judgment officially certified Clarence Bidd dead in June 2021. His legal and financial troubles could finally be closed with a verdict filed in Susquehanna County. Members of the family, friends, and former co-workers, as well as leaders from the local union, gathered in Montrose for a private memorial service. Lisa Bidd, who is Clarence's sister, delivered a succinct eulogy. It was said they buried the truth for 8 years, but now he gets his name back, this woman. Statement was subsequently cited in the area press, which portrayed the case as one of the most intricate cold case convictions in the recent history of Pennsylvania. A trade school scholarship fund was established in Clarence's name using some of the recovered insurance funds, in collaboration with IBW Local 1249. In early 2022, the initial wave of applications for the fund that aimed to support second career electricians were received. The Muni State Penitentiary Institution is housing Reba Bidd at this time. Lying throughout Lycoming County are female offenders. Until 2038, she cannot be considered for parole. Center County's SCI Bennett Township is where Randall Farrow is currently serving his time. During their time behind bars, the two cannot communicate with each other or any third person, as per court order. Nobody has found any signs of Clarence Bidd's body. No physical location or burial place has been located as a result of numerous searches, both governmental and privately coordinated ones. Law. No active search operations have been announced by enforcement. His corpse has still not been located in 2024. Authorities still have a 1999 Ford F-150 that the Clarence was last seen driving, scattered with paint chips, worn down by the years, and without its original plates. It is housed in a secure evidence lot in Scranton. The forensic evidence and the vehicle's recovery were crucial to the prosecution's and investigators' ability to bring the case ahead. The truck took center stage in the investigation when a body was missing, constructed via rebuilding rather than confession.